Tim Urban is a funny guy, and he has one of the most watched TED Talks ever. It has nearly 40 million views. What makes him such a great presenter? It's his storytelling. But what makes his storytelling so great? There's nothing like actually watching him in action. So we're going to watch the start of his TED Talk called Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator. Watch, enjoy, and identify what makes him a fun and fantastic presenter.
So in college, I was a government major, which means I had to write a lot of papers. Now, when a normal student writes a paper, they might spread the work out a little like this. So, you get started maybe a little slowly, but you get enough done in the first week that with some heavier days later on, everything gets done and things stay civil. And I would want to do that like that. That would be the plan. I would have it all ready to go, but then actually the paper would come along, and then I would kind of do this. And that would happen every single paper. But then came my 90-page senior thesis, a paper you're supposed to spend a year on. I knew for a paper like that, my normal workflow was not an option. It was way too big a project. So I planned things out, and I decided it kind of had to go something like this. This is how the year would go. So I'd start off light, and I'd bump it up in the middle months. And then at the end, I would kick it up into high gear. It's just like a little staircase. How hard could it be? Just walk up the stairs. No big deal, right? But then, funniest thing happened. Those first few months, they came and went, and I couldn't quite do stuff. So we had an awesome new revised plan. But then those middle months actually went by, and I didn't really write words. And so we were here. And then 2 months turned into 1 month, which turned into 2 weeks. And one day I woke up with 3 days until the deadline, still not having written a word. And so I did the only thing I could. I wrote 90 pages over 72 hours, pulling not one but 2 all-nighters. Humans are not supposed to pull 2 all-nighters. Sprinted across campus, dove in slow motion, and got it in just at the deadline. I thought that was the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call, and it's the school. And they say, "Is this Tim Urban?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, "We need to talk about your thesis." And I say, "Okay." And they say, "It's the best one we've ever seen." That did not happen. It was a very, very bad thesis. I just wanted to enjoy that one moment when all of you thought, "This guy is amazing."
So I love this story, and my students love this story. What makes this story so great? And what's average about it? Well, let's start with what is average about the storytelling, because Tim Urban really has a superpower. There's something he's really great at as a storyteller, and he doesn't have to rely on all of the other tricks. So what I think he's kind of average at is his own facial expressions, his own gestures. And don't get me wrong, I love it when he does the walking up the staircase gesture with his hands. And I love it when he pretends to dive into slow motion. But compared to a lot of great comedians, his storytelling with facial expressions and gestures is good, but pretty average. So how did he become one of the most popular TED Talks ever? How come it is that my students love this story? And how come it is that I've chosen this as a storyteller to focus on? Well, there's a few things that stand out to me. What stands out to you? I bet it's his use of humor. He says unexpected things, and his use of visuals is absolutely fantastic. So he has the visuals that bring his story to life, and he tells us really unexpected and humorous things. So there's a lot we can learn from Tim Urban about being a great storyteller. Let's take a look at the next part of his presentation. I think it's super fun, and he continues with his fantastic use of visuals to tell stories. And don't get me wrong, his visuals don't take the presentation over. He uses his visuals, he brings his visuals to life, and it just makes for a really fun storytelling experience.
No, it was very, very bad. Anyway, today I'm a writer, blogger guy. I write the blog Wait, But Why? And a couple of years ago, I decided to write about procrastination. My behaviors always perplexed the non-procrastinators around me, and I wanted to explain to the non-procrastinators of the world what goes on in the heads of procrastinators and why we are the way we are. Now, I had a hypothesis that the brains of procrastinators were actually different than the brains of other people. And to test this, I found an MRI lab that actually let me scan both my brain and the brain of a proven non-procrastinator, so I could compare them, and I actually brought them here to show you today, and I want you to take a look carefully to see if you can notice a difference. And I know that if you're not a trained brain expert, it's not that obvious, but just take a look, okay? So here's the brain of a non-procrastinator. Now, here's my brain. There is a difference. Both brains have a rational decision maker in them, but the procrastinator's brain also has an instant gratification monkey. Now, what does this mean for the procrastinator? Well, it means everything's fine until this happens. So the rational decision maker will make the rational decision to do something productive, but the monkey doesn't like that plan. So he actually takes the wheel and he says, actually, let's read the entire Wikipedia page of the Nancy Kerrigan-Tanya Harding scandal, because I just remembered that happened. Then we're going to go over to the fridge. We're going to see if there's anything new in there since 10 minutes ago. After that, we're going to go on a YouTube spiral that starts with videos of Richard Feynman talking about magnets and ends much, much later with us watching interviews with Justin Bieber's mom. All of that's going to take a while, so we're not going to really have room on the schedule for any work today. Sorry.
Okay, so there are lots of things that work really well with his use of storytelling. Obviously, we have the characters with the rational decision maker and the instant gratification monkey. So those characters have fun facial expressions. Tim Urban brings them to life, and certainly procrastination is a topic that students and pretty much everybody can relate to. So I think that's why people love this topic so much. We can laugh with them. And Tim Urban's fun because throughout his presentation, he's a confident guy, but he makes himself vulnerable too by being open and honest about this challenge or about this obstacle to life. So that's something that makes him and his story relatable. Now, when we get into how the story continues, there's a sense of conflict, right? There's a sense of, hey, he wants to be able to achieve something, but the instant gratification monkey and the rational decision maker, they're at odds with each other. They're in conflict with each other. And so you can see that the instant gratification monkey takes over the wheel, he takes charge, he takes control, and the rational decision maker and Tim Urban himself are left sighing and feeling that the world is in chaos. So what can you learn from Tim Urban and his storytelling approach? Well, I think it starts really with picking a topic that you're passionate about, picking a topic that you have some experience with. And honestly, procrastination is a meaningful subject for him. It's a real challenge. It's something he can speak from the heart with. So when you're looking for a storytelling topic to do in a speech, start thinking about What's something you care about, but there's always this obstacle that gets in the way? Okay, next lesson you can take is have some kind of tension and characterization. It doesn't need to be cartoonish characters. It might be real life people. Who gets in the way? What conflicts do you have? What do they say? What do you say? How do you feel? So be open, be honest, share your thoughts, be vulnerable, like Tim Urban, and see if you can kind of recreate a moment and dramatize what happened. If Tim Urban was to say, report style, procrastination is something that I struggle with. It's something a lot of people struggle with, and it's just kind of a crazy thing that happens that we can have goals, but for some reason we don't get stuff done in a timely way. That approach is not nearly as fun. It's not nearly as relatable. It's just a straight up report. Now, he wins people over with his fun characters and his use of humor. How can you win people over? Well, to learn some new tricks, we're going to continue watching some of Tim Urban's storytelling.
Now, the dark playground is a place that all of you procrastinators out there know very well. It's where leisure activities happen at times when leisure activities are not supposed to be happening. The fun you have in the dark playground isn't actually fun because it's completely unearned and the air is filled with guilt, dread, anxiety, self-hatred, all those good procrastinator feelings. And the question is, in this situation, with the monkey behind the wheel, how does the procrastinator ever get himself over here to this blue zone? A less pleasant place, but where really important things happen. Well, turns out that the procrastinator has a guardian angel, someone who's always looking down on him and watching over him in his darkest moments, someone called the panic monster. Now, the panic monster is dormant most of the time, but he suddenly wakes up anytime a deadline gets too close or there's danger of public embarrassment, a career disaster, or some other scary consequence. And importantly, he's the only thing that the monkey is terrified of. Now, he became very relevant in my life pretty recently because the people of TED reached out to me about 6 months ago and invited me to do a TED Talk. Now, of course, I said yes. It's always been a dream of mine to have done a TED Talk in the past. But in the middle of all this excitement, the rational decision maker seemed to have something else in his mind. He was saying, are we clear on what we just accepted? Do we get what's going to be now happening one day in the future? We need to sit down and work on this right now. And the monkey said, totally agree, but also let's just open Google Earth and let's zoom into the bottom of India, like 200 feet above the ground, and we're going to scroll up for 2.5 hours till we get to the top of the country so we can get a better feel for India. So that's what we did that day. As 6 months turned into 4, and then 2, and then 1, the people of TED decided to release the speakers. And I opened up the website, and there was my face staring right back at me, and guess who woke up? So the panic monster starts losing his mind, and a few seconds later, the whole system's in mayhem. And the monkey, who, remember, he's terrified of the panic monster, boom, he's up the tree. And finally, the rational decision maker can take the wheel and I can start working on the talk. Now, the panic monster explains all kinds of pretty insane procrastinated behavior, like how someone like me could spend 2 weeks unable to start the opening sentence of a paper and then miraculously find the unbelievable work ethic to stay up all night and write 8 pages. And this entire situation with the 3 characters, this is the procrastinator's system.
So what did you love most about this particular presentation? I'd love to know. I bet it's some of the same things that I loved. I loved the use of humor. I love that it's a topic I can relate to. I love that, the characters are so fun. When it comes to putting your own story together, what are the things you're going to take from Tim Urban and his story? What are the lessons that you're going to learn? Well, here are some things that I hope you do. I hope you consider using some visuals to illustrate key points in your story. I hope that you make use of facial expressions, and he has some great facial expressions and he has some great gestures, but remember too that the monkey and the rational decision maker, and certainly the panic monster, they have really fantastic facial expressions that we can relate to too. So we have the visuals, we have Tim Urban and his presence, and I think Tim Urban himself, he opens up, he lets us know something that he struggles with, and he conveys confidence with being open. He isn't apologetic or embarrassed about it. So that's a huge lesson for you to consider too. What's something that is an obstacle that you could share that gets in the way of your goal that you could tell us about in kind of an open, confident way that's inspiring in the end? And that's one thing about Tim Urban too. He's not just a person who procrastinates. He's a person that even though he procrastinates, he still succeeds. He does great things like this amazing TED Talk. So that's inspirational. In the end, you want to have some kind of a message that is a gift for people, something that they can say, I am so glad I listened to your story because I learned something not just about you, but about myself and about how life works. So when we think of stories, there's always characters, and the characters have viewpoints. Ultimately, we learn about life from your point of view, from how you made choices and how you grew. That's the kind of thing you want to share with people and end your story on.